Welcome to the BizDev Podcast. My name is Edwin Fisher. I have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited for this one. I have Eileen Kent, known as the Federal Sales Sherpa and also president of Custom Keynotes, LLC. Good morning. How are you, Eileen?
Good morning, Edwin. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah. I just wanted to start off with the first question. Very curious. How did you get the name Federal Sales Sherpa, and what does that exactly mean?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, a Sherpa is the guide that helps you up the Himalayas, and going after federal business can sometimes feel like going up this mysterious mountain of opportunities, but it's very easy to fall off a cliff or go down a rabbit hole. And it's interesting because when I was just starting in the industry and teaching people, and we'll give you a little more about my background in a few minutes, someone nicknamed me the Federal Sales Sherpa, and it's kind of stuck since around 2006. So it became my brand.
Oh, that's great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, kind of how'd you get started in the federal government sales?
I'm happy to share that with you. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of further background. I have been in, my degree is basically broadcast journalism. I graduated from Wayne State University in Detroit, and my first job came out of my first internship as a communications specialist inside a local city government in the Detroit area. It was north of where the tank plant is located in Warren. In Warren, there's a Tankcom tank plant there. And when I was first working inside as a communications specialist and public information officer, we had a little bit of worry there because it was the 80s, and being near a tank plant, the goal was to get everybody to leave the city if they needed to, in a disaster or an emergency. And I did that for about 5 years. I worked for a cable station that was part of it. We won some ACE awards. We ran about 20 hours a week in programming. So I got kind of my start in writing, PR, marketing, working inside government. And I actually, Edwin, come from a family of Govies. My father was a veteran of 3 wars. His draft number was number 17 in World War II. Oh, and he had a jazz band in the 40s, and the whole band joined with him. And they went down to Wright-Patterson, and they became the first Army Air Corps marching band at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And fast forward 9 kids later, I'm number 9. He retired commanding officer during the civil rights time in Montgomery, Alabama. Right in the middle of the Selma walks, he was commanding officer down there, and he retired in 1967. And so there was this sense of service in my family. Out of 9 of us, 6 served in one way, shape, or form. My eldest brother, one of the original designers of the stealth fighter. One of my middle brothers, lead investigator when the shuttle crashed, and he created a radar system that got the shuttle flying again. Another brother working inside the building department in Detroit. Another brother second in command in Bosnia when September 11th happened. A sister who was colonel in the reserves. So it kind of ran through the family, and I came up at the back end. My parents call me the caboose, and I worked inside government as well, city government. So fast forward, I went into IT after that. We're talking way back when the computer started with C:// and backslash. And I actually worked right across the street from the GM Tech Center and the tank plant on Van Dyke Avenue in Detroit. And then I took a left-hand turn in my career. I moved to Chicago, and I joined a company called Brook Furniture Rental. I know that sounds just completely in another direction, but that's when I started my sales career. And I went up the ladder at Brook during the 90s and during the dot-com craze. And when the real estate industry was going just gangbusters, we were staging homes for sale. That we invented that business, and you see a lot of TV programs about that. And just imagine this: I had a showroom downtown Chicago right next to the Sears Tower, and I was managing 25 salespeople in the Midwestern area, doing really well at this company. Then suddenly September 11th happened, and my showroom was right next to the Sears Tower, and we literally walked out of Chicago. In fact, I had been setting up offices of floors and floors of furniture for companies all over the Chicagoland area. And here, all of a sudden, September 11th happened, and we were walking out of Chicago, and Chicago evacuated itself 45 minutes. So when they said they evacuated the Sears Tower, actually the whole downtown walked out. And I know about that because I was part of the facility management industry back then. So the company at the time, right after 9/11, asked me to go on the Lewis and Clark expedition to sell to the federal government. So, Edwin, I started traveling. They gave me a round trip ticket to LA, San Francisco, San Diego, Dallas, Atlanta, DC, back to Chicago. 7 out of 8 weeks, I was traveling all those territories, literally walking the halls of the federal buildings and getting to know people. I had no training. I was handed what I didn't even know what a GSA schedule was then, but they handed it to me, a brochure, and said, go make it happen. And Edwin, I set up Homeland Security's very first undisclosed location, their very first 30 workstations. So if anybody remembers that week in DC, when we went to Orange, there was a threat level orange around the winter time. It was December 11th to like the 20th, where we went to an orange level, and all the Humvees came out and they were at all the monuments, pointed at the sky. I was there, and it was snowing, Edwin.
Wow.
It snowed 11 inches one day, 12 inches the next. It was this bomb of snow. And I knew the terrorists weren't going to come out. There's no video opportunity, and the weather's terrible. So at the time, while I was there, I was helping Homeland Security set up their very first offices. So we were meeting with them, looking at their designs, getting things going. And so I started to sell around the country, developing these relationships. It was sheer cold calling, Edwin. And then a company called fedmarket.com and I became friends. And they said, you know, Eileen, you are doing this right because it takes a groundswell. It takes people getting out there and talking to people to win federal contracts. And you've done this. So we'd like you to teach our classes. So from 2003 till 2012, Edwin, I trained federal sales, proposal writing, GSA schedule, contracting. And over that course, GSA itself would bring me in as a keynote speaker to speak about selling to the feds, because some of the things I talked about, you know, developing relationships, cold calling, and getting out there, they couldn't quite say. It was something that was kind of uncomfortable for them to say, but if it came from industry, it was a little bit easier. So a lot of corporations brought me in. Synex Corp, if you've ever heard of them, they would sell the cameras that we have on our computers now. So they sell a lot of computer components. So I trained their entire national team. So I trained over 10,000 people in that 2003 to 2012, traveling the country. And in the middle of that, I don't know if you remember, but from 2009 to 11, there was something called the American Recovery Act. That's when all the finances kind of fell apart, and the federal government did this influx of $80 billion into the marketplace. And Public Building Services decided to recreate 40 of the federal buildings. So a roofing company asked me to manage their team to go after some of that business while I was still training. And I had 48 locations of roofers that were calling on their local agencies, and goodness gracious, you know, they're roofers. I got to teach them federal sales. So I built them an action plan, and in 18 months, Edwin, we captured 65 million of that ARRA money.
Wow.
So fast forward to 2012, not to give you this big long story, but it really kind of comes together as to why I'm so passionate about this business. So in 2012, FedMarket and I parted ways. We're still friends, but I decided to start my own business, and I built a 3-step program where I help companies one-on-one with their federal sales action plan, customizing it just for them. So I now work with companies one-on-one as the federal sales Sherpa. So I've worked with over 300 companies with this one-on-one coaching, help, planning, and training their teams on how to sell the federal government since 2012. So that's where I am now, helping companies one-on-one.
That's awesome. That's a really good backstory, and sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge within the federal arena. That's great. So if I'm a small business kind of asking myself for, planning for the next year, 2020, what would be some of the first things to consider, to sell to the government? What should I do? Maybe the groundwork.
Great. Well, there's a couple of very simple things you can do just out of the gate, Edwin. There's a website called System for Award Management, sam.gov. And you need to go in there and register your company, which means you're going to be putting in basic information about your company name, your address, what type of business you're in. They're going to be asking some information from your bank. They're going to want to know your taxpayer ID number. And right now, they're going to ask for your DUNS number. That's going to be changing soon, but you need to register at sam.gov. That's the first step. And over 650,000 companies are registered at SAM. And that's the first thing the government customers are going to ask you is if you're registered there. In order to register there, there's a couple of things that you're going to need to do homework-wise to prepare for that. One is to determine what is your North American industry classification code. The acronym for that is NAICS code. NAICS. And if you go to Google and you type in NAICS code lookup, and you need to choose the census site to go there, and you type in some descriptions of your business, and you're going to get some choices for your NAICS code. If you've done your business taxes, you use your NAICS code for your taxes as well. So you're going to need to put that information into your SAM record. And then another thing you're going to need to do, because you said, Edwin, you're a small business, you need to prove that. The SBA has a little bitty lookup table that you need to go to. Again, go to Google, type in SBA size standards table. And they have a PDF file you're going to download. You're going to compare your NAICS code number to what they would determine you to be small business. So for example, if you were a furniture manufacturer, Edwin, the NAICS code for furniture, it's for manufacturing, is 500 employees or less determines that you're a small business. But if you're a software developer and you only have 2 employees, they don't base it for software on the number of employees. They base it on your average income for the last 3 years. And right now they're changing that. It might go to 5, but it hasn't been formal yet. But I think it's around 23 million in sales average for the last couple of years. So you need to go to the SBA size standard table, and you need to determine whether you're a large or small business under your NAICS code, because you're going to be answering some of those questions at the SAM website. And you're also going to determine whether you're a woman-owned business, whether you're a veteran-owned business, whether you're a service-disabled veteran-owned business. There's some other certifications, like being a minority-owned company, that the SBA, you can say you're a minority-owned company, but there's a special certification called 8A certification that needs to be approved by the SBA, and you have to go through an application process there, and then they'll put that little tag on your SAM record. So it's not hard to fill out the SAM application. You just need to have some homework ready before you go in. You need your DUNS number for now. That's going to be changing. You're going to need your NAICS code. You're going to need your size, your business size. You're going to need some banking information and your TPIN number. So those are some starting points. And then we get into the interesting thing, which is if you think that certifying yourself, all of a sudden they're going to start calling you. Do you remember how many companies I told you were registered in SAM? Do you remember that number, Edwin?
Not offhand.
It
No.
was hundreds of thousands, 650,000, 650,000. A lot of companies think once I'm registered at SAM, I can sit back on my certs and wait for the customers to call. No, they're never going to find you in SAM. In fact, when you register on SAM, you're going to get approached by a lot of consultants wanting to do business with you, because that information is public. So you're going to get a lot of outreach, but it won't be from the government. If it is from the government, it'll be a .gov email address or a .mil email address. But if it's .com, .org, .net, US, it's not
It's
a
probably
government
scam,
entity
probably
reaching
scam or
out
someone
to you.
trying to take something from you.
Right. They just want to sell something to you,
Yeah.
which is, the American way. But you want to if you think that registering a SAM is the step, that's not just the step. You need to start doing some outreach, and you need to start calling on people and introducing yourself.
Okay. So, say as I'm a small business and I went through the steps of SAM and getting certified, figuring out my NAICS code and all that good stuff, that's complete. Um, Registrations and certifications are done. Now what?
Great. One thing that I would suggest, especially since you're a beginner, remember when I told you when I first started selling to the feds, I was literally traveling the country, calling on people. Imagine how much that's going to cost you if you have to do that. So if you had a full-time person, I'm just guessing, probably six figures, and then they're traveling the country 7 out of 8 weeks, you're talking 50, 60 grand in travel. So between a salesperson's salary and walking the halls, that can get pretty expensive only to just get to know what's happening. So what I like to say is there's three things you can do right now that can really shore up the time, because it does take 12 to 24 months to get your first decent order, and we want to shore up that time frame just a little bit. The first thing you need is training.
Okay.
Training your salespeople on, first of all, who's who inside the government. What's the difference between those people? What's appropriate to say to them? When is it appropriate to approach them? What is legal and what's not legal in terms of how you approach them? Because when you're selling to the federal employees, you can't give them anything. This is not commercial sales where you go door to door handing out, candy, popcorn, and giveaways and having contests. This is a relationship sale, and there's certain very, very set rules about following that. So getting sales training for your team is really important so that they can talk the talk, walk the walk. Also get to know the acronyms of their agencies and get to know who's appropriate to talk to in terms of there's buyers and then there's the end users that need what you sell. So we need to get those people. So training. The next thing is, which is really interesting because this is not available commercially. The government has information on every single task order and contract that they've awarded to other vendors, your competitors. And you can get access to that if you want to. It's free, but the problem is interpreting that data is really hard for a newbie, for a beginner that doesn't know what all this data means. It's really rich, but if you don't know what it means, it doesn't mean anything to you. So one thing I like to say is you need to either hire someone or learn how to do a deep dive competitive analysis, looking at that contracting data based on keywords. So furniture might be one, furniture installation. If you're a furniture company, if you were an IT company, it might be cloud, it might be Azure, it might be Drupal programming. You do specific keyword searches in this data, and you can see who buys what you sell from whom and how. And then you also want to do some data dips on your competitors to see where they're hanging out. This information is at our fingertips. So that research will help us determine the top 5 agencies that you'll want to work with and the top 5 primes that are working at those agencies, so you can consider reaching out to those agencies and also reaching out to the primes that are working with those agencies, considering teaming with them or learning more about them so you can unseat them. So that's step 2. The next step is building a plan around those top 5 agencies that buy what you sell and those primes that are working with those agencies. So my goal when I'm working with someone is to save you that year. So what I like to do is look at the data and build you an action plan, because I've been doing this for almost 18 years. I know a lot about the agencies and how they're broken down. So let me give you an example for what I mean. Let's say you're an IT company that's selling, let's say, IT, health IT services, and the VA becomes one of your particular focused agencies that you'd like to approach because you're a service disabled veteran owned company. So if I were to do a data dip, I bet we'll find out that the VA is one of your top potential customers. But one of the things we're going to find out too is that Cerner is the prime right now, working with them on their health IT records. And there are other IT companies with special contract vehicles working directly with the VA that are veteran-owned companies too. And there's a specific office out of New Jersey that does IT contracting. So if I were to build you a plan and you sold health IT products and services, I would circle that plan around that New Jersey office, the primes that are working with them, the contract holders that are also service disabled vets that you might want to work with, as well as Cerner. You see how that works? And then I would build a plan around that for you specifically. So those 3 steps are things that you need to do before you step off. And then, of course, you need to execute the plan. You're going to have to make phone calls. You're going to have to write emails. You're going to have to ask for introductions. You're going to have to connect with people on LinkedIn. It's going to be at all points, from every direction you're going to be going in to get to know people at those agencies. And eventually someone's going to say, you've been calling on me for a while, but really who it is, it's this person. And you got it.
Yeah.
And you zoom in on that person. So just like in sales, we got to kind of approach it from different directions, but at least I'm zooming you into a location with intelligence so when you're walking the halls, you're speaking intelligently. You already know who they're working with. You already know what contract vehicles they prefer. And then you're asking them, can you point me in the right direction so I can get in here and show you my capabilities?
Yeah, I know you mentioned just mentioned contract vehicles, and there's many out there, including like GSA, SOUP, Seaport, and XG. Do you mind explaining some to our listeners what some of those mean, or what they are, and how they're utilized?
Sure. When I do my federal sales training, I go into a really great picture of contract vehicles. The phrase doesn't contract vehicle sound like when you get approved, let's say on the GSA schedule and your pricing is approved, that all this business is going to come driving at you?
You may assume
Contract
that.
vehicle.
Yeah.
So I hate the phrase because really it's not. These are tools that the agencies have that help them avoid the public websites having to post opportunities at the public bid sites. Currently, you might have heard of FedBizOps.
Yep.
That's gone now. Okay, you have to go to beta.sam.gov to look for live open bids, which can take a buyer up to 269 days to award and get the project started. It's horrible. So what they've done is they're creating contracts that they will allow companies to be on for a certain time period, most of the time 1 to 5 years. And then those companies that win those contracts get to compete against each other for the business. So GSA is a contract that you can apply for as a business anytime. You can get on it and come off it at any time. So anybody can bid on it to be on it. And what it is it's an application process, and you're going to be really, really negotiating your pricing for what you do. That's the hardest part about getting your prices approved on the schedule. And I hate the word schedule. It should be called a contract, because once you're on the GSA schedule or contract vehicle, if there's an opportunity for you and you sell products, my understanding is you sell products up to $25,000, they might be listed at GSA Advantage, and a buyer can just click and buy from any agency. That is if they want to use that portal to buy from you. If it's services and it's under $25,000 on the GSA contract vehicle, if it's services, then they can look at the price lists of 2 others like you and still work with you. But if it's over 25,000 product or services, they have to post a bid on their internal site called eBuy and get their hands on 3 bidders. That average award is only 14 days. Remember when I said that BizOps was like 269? So GSA makes it really easy for a buyer to get to a vendor quickly and easy. But the challenge is only 10% of government purchases are going across GSA schedule. So you've got 40 billion going through GSA. Now, there are other contract vehicles, IDIQs, that the agencies have directly with 4 or 5 companies, and they recompete it every 5 years. There's set-asides and others. So that's a basically these contract vehicles are easier ways to get to you as a vendor without having to publish it on FedBizOps. So imagine, let's say the fire's in California. The fire chief needs a 747 to come in and drop some chemicals onto the fire to put it out. And you know that's going to be over 25,000. So he calls his contracting officer and says, I need a vendor to come in here and do a drop over here. If she said I had to put that on FedBizOps, he'd be like, are you kidding me? So she's going to use one of her contract holders that already have a contract vehicle, bridge, IDIQ, GSA schedule to quickly award that contract. They negotiated that maybe a year ago, their pricing, and they're sitting there waiting for orders. So if you have a contract vehicle, if you have GSA, Seaport E, SOUP, CIO SP3, one of the GWACs through GSA, Oasis, Alliant, 8A Stars, anything through the VA, their T4NG or their Vector, that contract vehicle is sitting there like a bridge going nowhere unless you get your customers to use it and cross it. It's a bridge empty unless you get people to cross it. I call them contract bridges. It's an easier analogy because it sits there empty. And if you don't have access to it, Edwin, let's say you're selling one of your products, but they decide they want to use a contract vehicle that you don't have, a contract bridge you don't have, you can walk over to another vendor and borrow their bridge, a lane on their bridge. They're going to charge you toll for that, but you certainly can use their bridge. So I use the bridge analogy. It's a lot easier to picture contract vehicles being bridges. They're sitting there. You're on one side of the river. I call it the raging river of rules, FedBizOps. And the customer's on the other side. They'd rather not jump into that river. They'd rather use a bridge, GSA, or one of those Seaport E, SOUP, CIO SP3, or one of the GWACs. So contract vehicles make it easier for buyers to get to you quickly. And if you don't have it, you can certainly borrow it from a teaming partner.
That's interesting. That's a lot of information. So if I was, from the day of me signing up on SAM as a new federal potential customer, how long would that process be start to finish? I know there's no guarantees, but just roughly in your experience, what have you seen?
Before you get your first order?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that when I was working with Brook Furniture Rental, no training whatsoever, walking the halls, took me a year to get that first DHS. That took lots of conversations with a lot of under the radar people to get to the facilities people at Homeland Security. And then all of a sudden, other business started to pop. Now, at the roofing company, we captured 65 million in 18 months. The first year was 20 million. The second year was 45. So but I had 48 locations of people out there hitting the field. Plus, you had to wait for the bids to come out. You had to write the bids. So that's a roofing company. So a service company has to expect to invest about 12 to 24 months to get business. A products company can start selling to someone right away with a credit card if they wanted to. If they had the GSA schedule, it can happen pretty quickly, but you still have to build those relationships. So I usually like to tell companies the realistic time frame that all of the experts talk about is 12 to 24 months. And let me just cover really quickly. One of my clients just recently asked me to execute their plan for them. So they paid me for 30 to 50 hours here in November to go get business for them. Now it was the first month executing the plan. So our realistic goal was to get 5 great appointments. Today is November 16th. As of yesterday, I've gotten 11 for them.
Oh, nice.
2 of them are large presentations in front of GSA's public building services project teams in the National Capital Region. 5 of them are with major prime contractors. It's so small woman-owned business with great past performance, great case studies to share. So we created a lot of excitement for them, and the primes want to meet them because they've got some expertise. So I work the plan, and I can tell you I've gathered about 100 leads. And we've got 11 appointments so far. We're halfway through the month, and I've spent 33 hours working the plan. So if you had a full-time salesperson that knew what they were doing with a plan to execute, you could get the ball rolling pretty quickly, but don't expect the sales to happen overnight. You need to have realistic goals. First, it's going to be capabilities briefings. It's going to be conversations on the phone. It's going to be networking conversations and friendly conversations. Then they're going to bring you into someone else. But you've got to approach. I've approached them on the phone, through LinkedIn, through email, from many, many different directions. I've had some friends that have introduced us in. So it's a wide variety of angles you have to take. But if you don't execute the plan before you're going to be at zero sales, 12 months from now. So it's having a plan and actually going for it. That's where it works. So just to give you an idea on timing and the realistic side of it, I find 12 to 24 months, but actually getting people to talk to you right away.
Okay. If somebody wants to learn more, get some information on how to get started, how do they reach out to you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so my name is Eileen Kent, and you can find me on LinkedIn very easily. I also have a website, Federal Sales Sherpa, and I do have about 12 podcasts of my own up there with some really great experts that you can listen with my compliments. I built that just for you. Or you can call me directly, Eileen Kent, Federal Sales Sherpa, President of Custom Keynotes, 312-636-5381. Talk to me. I'd love to help you out.
Okay, awesome. Well, Eileen, thank you so much. It was great interviewing the Federal Sales Sherpa. Once again, my name is Edwin Fisher with the BizDev Podcast. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin.